The dust swirled like angry spirits around the small frontier town of Copper Creek as Sheriff Thomas McKenna collapsed against the wooden post outside the saloon, his hand pressed tight against the crimson stain spreading across his white shirt. The outlaw's bullet had found its mark during the shootout at high noon, and now the life was slowly draining from the man who had protected this town for nearly a decade. Doc Harrison rushed from his office, his medical bag clutched in weathered hands, but one look at the wound told him everything he needed to know. The bullet had torn through vital organs, and in a town without a proper hospital, without the medicines and equipment found in the big cities back east, the sheriff was losing too much blood to survive. The townspeople gathered in worried clusters, their faces etched with concern and fear. Without their sheriff, Copper Creek would be defenseless against the gangs of outlaws that roamed the territory, preying on settlements just like theirs. Women clutched their children close while men fingered the revolvers at their sides, knowing full well that none of them possessed the skill and courage that had made Thomas McKenna a legend in these parts. The sheriff had single-handedly cleaned up the town, driving out the corrupt officials and dangerous criminals that had once made life unbearable for honest folk trying to make a living in the harsh frontier. Doc Harrison worked frantically in his small clinic, doing everything in his power to stop the bleeding and repair the damage. But as the hours passed, it became clear that his efforts were in vain. The sheriff's pulse grew weaker, his breathing more labored, and his skin took on the pallor of approaching death from severe blood loss. Mayor Whitman paced the clinic's waiting room, wringing his hands and muttering prayers under his breath, while the town's most prominent citizens debated what they would do when the inevitable occurred. Some spoke of sending for help from the territorial marshal, others discussed forming a citizen militia, but all knew that neither option would provide the immediate protection they desperately needed. As night fell over Copper Creek, a lone figure appeared at the edge of town, silhouetted against the purple sky. It was a young woman, maybe 18 or 19 years old, leading a tired horse and carrying a small bundle of possessions. Her clothes were dusty from the trail, her dark hair tangled by wind and weather, and her feet were wrapped in cloth where her worn boots had fallen apart miles back. She had the look of someone who had been traveling for weeks, maybe months, with nowhere particular to go, and no family waiting anywhere. The road had been her home for as long as she could remember, moving from town to town, doing odd jobs for meals, and sleeping under the stars when no shelter could be found. The young woman, who called herself Kate, though that might not have been her real name, approached the cluster of people gathered outside Doc Harrison's clinic. She listened to their worried conversations, learning about the sheriff's condition and the town's desperate situation. Most of the townspeople barely glanced at her, dismissing her as just another drifter passing through, but Kate studied their faces and heard the genuine fear in their voices. These were good people, she realized, the kind who had built something worth protecting in this unforgiving wilderness. Kate pushed through the crowd and knocked on the clinic door, asking to see the dying sheriff. Doc Harrison initially refused, explaining that the man needed rest and that there was nothing anyone could do now except wait for the end. But something in the young woman's eyes, a quiet confidence mixed with urgent determination, made him pause. She spoke quietly, telling him that she had medical knowledge learned during her travels, that she had assisted doctors in mining camps and cattle towns, and that she knew a procedure that might save the sheriff's life if they acted quickly. The desperate doctor, having exhausted all conventional treatments available in his frontier clinic, finally relented and allowed her into the room where Sheriff McKenna lay unconscious, his life ebbing away with each weak heartbeat. What happened next would become the stuff of legend in Copper Creek, a story told and retold around campfires and in saloons throughout the territory. Kate examined the sheriff's wound with the practiced eye of someone who had seen too much violence and bloodshed in her young life. She quickly determined that while the bullet had caused significant internal damage, the primary threat was massive blood loss that was overwhelming his body's ability to recover. She had learned about blood transfusion procedures from a German doctor she had worked with in a Colorado mining camp, a physician who had studied the latest medical techniques in European universities before coming west to seek his fortune. Kate rolled up her sleeves and opened her small medical kit, revealing instruments and supplies that were far more sophisticated than anything Doc Harrison possessed in his frontier clinic. She had acquired these tools over years of travel, trading her medical services for equipment and learning from every doctor, surgeon, and field medic she encountered along the way. Her nomadic existence had given her a medical education that was both unconventional and remarkably comprehensive, combining frontier practicality with cutting-edge techniques from the great medical centers of the world. Working with swift precision, Kate prepared for the dangerous procedure of direct blood transfusion, a technique that was still experimental even in the finest hospitals back east. She explained to Doc Harrison that she would need to transfer her blood directly into the sheriff's circulation to replace what he had lost, using a system of rubber tubing and metal cannulas that she had improvised based on procedures she had witnessed in field hospitals during various frontier conflicts. The old doctor watched in amazement as the young woman worked with the skill and confidence of a trained surgeon, her hands steady despite the enormous responsibility she was taking on. Kate made careful incisions in both her arm and the sheriff's, connecting their circulatory systems through the improvised transfusion apparatus. She monitored both patients carefully, adjusting the flow rate based on pulse strength and blood pressure, techniques she had learned from a brilliant battlefield surgeon who had served in the Civil War. For nearly an hour, she maintained the transfusion, allowing her healthy blood to flow into the sheriff's depleted system while constantly checking for signs of the rejection reactions that could prove fatal to both of them. The procedure was grueling and dangerous, requiring Kate to give up a significant amount of her own blood while maintaining perfect concentration to avoid complications that could kill them both. As her own strength waned from blood loss, she carefully monitored the sheriff's vital signs, watching his color improve and his breathing become stronger as her blood replaced what he had lost in the shooting. When she finally disconnected the transfusion apparatus, both she and Sheriff McKenna were weak from the ordeal, but his pulse was strong and steady for the first time since the shooting. Doc Harrison had never witnessed anything like the procedure Kate had performed, though he had heard rumors of similar techniques being attempted in military hospitals during the war. The young woman's knowledge of anatomy, circulation, and blood compatibility was far beyond what he would have expected from a traveling drifter. But her results spoke for themselves. Sheriff McKenna's condition stabilized rapidly, and within hours he was conscious and speaking coherently, though both he and Kate would need days of rest to recover from their shared ordeal. The town erupted in celebration when word spread that their sheriff would live, but the joy was tempered by questions about the mysterious young woman who had saved him with her advanced medical knowledge. Kate remained weak for several days, and when she finally recovered her strength, she was modest about her accomplishments, explaining that she had simply been fortunate to learn useful techniques during her travels. She spoke of the various doctors and medical professionals she had worked with over the years, how she had traded her assistance for knowledge and equipment, gradually building the skills that had enabled her to save the sheriff's life. Sheriff McKenna felt stronger than he had in years as he recovered from both his wound and the transfusion, marveling at the young woman's medical expertise and the courage she had shown in risking her own life to save his. Kate found herself reluctant to leave Copper Creek, as she had always left other towns, drawn not only to the community that had welcomed her, but particularly to the sheriff who owed her his life. Thomas McKenna was a man in his 30s, weathered by years of frontier living, but still handsome in a rugged way, with grey eyes that had seen too much violence but retained their capacity for kindness and gratitude. The sheriff offered Kate a position working with Doc Harrison in his clinic, recognizing that her medical knowledge and experience could benefit the entire community. She accepted gratefully, finally having found a place where her skills were valued and needed, and threw herself into improving the town's medical facilities and training local people in basic healthcare procedures. Doc Harrison, initially overwhelmed by her advanced techniques, became her eager student, learning new approaches to surgery, wound care, and patient treatment that transformed his practice. As weeks turned into months, the relationship between Kate and Sheriff McKenna deepened into something neither had expected to find. She would bring him coffee during his evening rounds, listening to his stories about cleaning up the town and his dreams of making the frontier safe for families to settle and thrive. He, in turn, was fascinated by her tales of life on the road, the places she had seen and the doctors she had learned from, the strength and knowledge she had developed through years of surviving on her own while helping others wherever she went. They were both outsiders in their own ways, shaped by hardship and loss, but together they found a sense of belonging that had eluded them individually. Kate's medical expertise and Thomas's commitment to justice made them a formidable team in building a safer, healthier community, while their growing personal attachment gave them both something worth fighting for beyond their professional duties. The story of the sheriff's miraculous recovery spread throughout the territory, bringing visitors from neighboring towns who wanted to meet the skilled young doctor who had performed such an advanced medical procedure under frontier conditions. Some came seeking treatment for their own ailments, and Kate's growing reputation as a gifted physician attracted patients from hundreds of miles away, people who had given up hope of finding competent medical care in the remote regions of the West. Kate established formal medical protocols for the clinic, training assistants in sterile technique, patient care, and emergency procedures that were far ahead of their time. She corresponded with physicians in major cities, sharing her innovations in frontier medicine while learning about new developments in surgery and patient treatment. Her combination of advanced medical knowledge and practical frontier experience made her uniquely qualified to develop healthcare solutions for the challenging conditions of the American West. The town prospered as word spread of its remarkable sheriff and his equally remarkable doctor, attracting honest settlers and businesses that brought new life to the frontier community. Kate's medical innovations included improved sanitation systems, vaccination programs, and surgical techniques that dramatically reduced mortality rates compared to other frontier settlements. Her success in treating conditions that had previously been considered hopeless made Copper Creek a destination for people seeking the best medical care available west of the Mississippi. But Kate's past as a road orphan had left her with deep-seated fears about commitment and permanence. Despite her growing feelings for Thomas McKenna, she struggled with the urge to flee before she could be hurt or abandoned, as she had been so many times before. The sheriff sensed her inner turmoil and gave her space, while making it clear that she was welcome to stay as long as she wished, that she had found a true home in Copper Creek if she chose to claim it. His patience and understanding only deepened her affection for him, but also intensified her fear of losing the happiness and professional fulfillment she had found. The test of their relationship came when a gang of outlaws, seeking revenge for their fallen comrade who had shot the sheriff, rode into Copper Creek with violence on their minds. They had heard about the sheriff's miraculous recovery and were determined to finish what their partner had started, but they underestimated both the strength of the man they faced and the fierce protectiveness of the woman who loved him. Kate refused to hide in safety while Thomas faced danger, insisting on standing by his side as the outlaws made their demands in the dusty main street. The confrontation that followed demonstrated both Thomas's recovered strength and Kate's cool courage under pressure. When one of the outlaws was wounded in the gunfight, Kate immediately moved to provide medical treatment, her professional oath overriding any personal feelings about the man who had come to kill her beloved. Her skillful treatment of the wounded outlaw, combined with Thomas's fair but firm handling of the situation, convinced the surviving gang members to surrender rather than continue their vendetta against people who showed such integrity and compassion even toward their enemies. The crisis had shown Kate that running away would not protect her from pain, and that the love and professional satisfaction she had found were worth fighting for. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Thomas McKenna asked Kate to marry him, not just out of gratitude for saving his life, but because he had come to love everything about her, from her fierce independence and medical brilliance to her gentle compassion for those in need. She said yes through tears of joy, finally ready to stop running and build a life with the man who had shown her what home and partnership could really mean. Their wedding became the biggest celebration Copper Creek had ever seen, with people traveling from hundreds of miles away to witness the union of the sheriff and the brilliant doctor who had captured his heart. The ceremony was performed by a traveling preacher, but the real blessing came from the community that had witnessed their love story unfold and their dedication to serving others, even at great personal risk. Kate McKenna, as she now called herself, continued expanding her medical practice while pioneering new approaches to frontier healthcare. She established training programs for midwives and medical assistants, created supply chains for importing essential medicines and equipment, and developed treatment protocols specifically adapted to the challenges of frontier life. Her work attracted the attention of medical schools back east, which began incorporating her innovations into their curricula for doctors planning to practice in frontier regions. Thomas and Kate built a home that reflected both their professional commitments and their personal happiness, with office space for Kate's medical practice connected to living areas where they could enjoy the privacy and intimacy of married life. Their house became a symbol of what was possible when two people combined their individual strengths in service of something larger than themselves, creating both personal fulfillment and community benefit through their partnership. Years passed, and their reputations spread throughout the territory, inspiring songs and stories that would be told for generations. Some claimed that Kate possessed miraculous powers, but those who knew them best understood that her success came from exceptional medical training, innovative thinking, and absolute dedication to her patients' welfare. Her blood transfusion technique, refined through years of practice, saved dozens of lives and established her as one of the premier surgeons in the American West. The couple eventually had children of their own, raising them with the values that had brought them together and teaching them the importance of education, service, and commitment to community welfare. Their first child, a daughter they named Hope, inherited her mother's intellectual curiosity and aptitude for medicine, eventually becoming the first woman to receive formal medical training at a major university while specializing in frontier healthcare. Their twin sons, Samuel and Daniel, followed their father into law enforcement, but brought their mother's scientific approach to criminal investigation and community policing. Sheriff McKenna served his community faithfully for many more years, his reputation for fairness and courage making Copper Creek one of the safest and most prosperous towns in the territory. He incorporated Kate's scientific methods into his law enforcement work, using systematic investigation techniques and evidence-based approaches that were far ahead of their time. Together, they created a model of community leadership that balanced individual rights with collective security, personal freedom with social responsibility. Kate established a medical college that served not just their town, but the entire region, training doctors and nurses to serve frontier communities with the same combination of advanced knowledge and practical adaptability that had made her so successful. Her curriculum included not only traditional medical subjects, but also the special challenges of frontier practice, from performing surgery without electricity to treating patients who might live days away from proper facilities. Their love story became inseparable from the history of Copper Creek itself, a reminder that sometimes the most unlikely people could change everything, that healing could come from knowledge and dedication rather than mystery, and that love had the power to transform even the harshest frontier into a place worth calling home. The road orphan, who had saved a dying sheriff with her medical expertise, had not only given him back his life, but had found her own purpose and happiness in the process, proving that sometimes the greatest miracles happen when two skilled, dedicated people find each other and choose to build something lasting together. As the years rolled by like tumbleweeds across the vast prairie, the McKenna family became the heart and soul of Copper Creek's growing prosperity. Kate's medical innovations continued to evolve, incorporating new techniques and equipment as they became available, while Thomas's law enforcement methods became a model studied by peace officers throughout the West. Their partnership demonstrated how professional excellence and personal devotion could reinforce each other, creating achievements that neither could have accomplished alone. The clinic that Kate established grew from a single room into a proper hospital with separate wards for men, women, and children, complete with surgical facilities that rivaled those found in major cities. Her training programs produced a generation of frontier medical professionals who carried her techniques throughout the West, establishing a network of skilled practitioners who could provide quality healthcare even in the most remote locations. Thomas's law enforcement innovations included the territory's first citizen police academy, training deputies not just in gunfighting and arrest procedures, but in scientific investigation methods, community relations, and the legal principles that form the foundation of frontier justice. His approaches attracted the attention of territorial officials who offered him positions of increasing responsibility, but Thomas always declined, preferring to remain in the town where he had found love, purpose, and the opportunity to implement his vision of fair and effective law enforcement. The couple faced their share of challenges over the years, including a devastating drought that lasted 3 seasons and threatened to destroy everything the community had built. During this crisis, Kate's knowledge of public health helped organize water conservation efforts and sanitation systems that prevented disease outbreaks, while Thomas coordinated relief efforts that brought in supplies from more prosperous regions. Their combined leadership during the emergency strengthened community bonds and established systems that would serve the town for decades to come. A typhoid outbreak in the 7th year of their marriage tested Kate's medical skills like never before, as the disease spread rapidly through the growing town's inadequate sanitation systems. Working around the clock for weeks, often going without sleep for days at a time, she implemented quarantine procedures, water purification systems, and treatment protocols that significantly reduced the mortality rate compared to other communities facing similar outbreaks. Her success in containing the epidemic attracted the attention of the Territorial Medical Board, which awarded her an official physician's license, making her one of the first women licensed to practice medicine in the American West. Thomas faced his own professional challenges when a corrupt federal marshal arrived in Copper Creek with orders to investigate allegations of unauthorized medical practice and vigilante justice. The marshal, who had been bribed by business interests that resented the town's independence and prosperity, intended to arrest both Thomas and Kate on fabricated charges that would have destroyed everything they had built together. The crisis brought the entire community together in defense of their sheriff and doctor, with testimony from hundreds of people whose lives had been saved or improved by the couple's dedicated service. The confrontation with the corrupt marshal culminated in a dramatic showdown in the town square, where Thomas was forced to choose between his federal badge and his principles. When the marshal attempted to arrest Kate during a medical emergency involving a child's life, Thomas drew his gun and ordered the federal officer to stand down, effectively ending his career as a territorial peace officer, but affirming his commitment to protecting the people he served. The townspeople rallied behind their former sheriff, electing him mayor in a unanimous vote and creating a new position of town marshal that allowed him to continue his law enforcement duties without federal interference. Kate's reaction to her husband's sacrifice of his official position was to redouble her own efforts to serve the community, establishing satellite clinics in surrounding settlements and organizing a network of traveling doctors who could provide medical care to isolated ranches and mining camps. She also began documenting her medical techniques and innovations, creating a comprehensive guide to frontier medicine that would eventually be published by a university press and used to train doctors throughout the Western Territories. The McKenna children grew up immersed in their parents' work, learning early the values of service, education, and dedication to community welfare. Hope inherited her mother's medical gifts and analytical mind, becoming the first person to receive formal medical training under Kate's supervision, while also studying at Eastern universities during summers. She eventually took over much of the day-to-day operation of the main hospital while pioneering new approaches to women's health and pediatric care. Samuel showed his father's aptitude for leadership and justice, becoming Thomas's deputy at the age of 18 and eventually succeeding him as town marshal. He brought scientific methods to law enforcement using fingerprinting techniques and systematic investigation procedures that were decades ahead of their time. Daniel possessed both parents' gifts, serving as both a lawman and a medic, pioneering new approaches to emergency response that combined law enforcement and medical care in ways that would later become standard practice. The family's influence extended far beyond Copper Creek's borders as their children married and established their own families throughout the territory, carrying with them the lessons learned from parents who had transformed personal tragedy into community triumph. Kate's medical innovations spread to medical schools in major cities, while Thomas's law enforcement methods were adopted by police departments across the expanding frontier, creating a legacy of progressive scientific public service that influenced the development of the American West. As they entered their later years, Thomas and Kate McKenna became living legends, sought after for their wisdom and experience by younger generations of frontier leaders. They established a university that combined academic education with practical training in medicine, law enforcement, and community leadership, ensuring that their knowledge and methods would be passed on to future generations. The institution attracted students from across the continent, becoming a renowned center of learning that helped shape the intellectual and professional development of the emerging Western states. Kate's medical career continued to evolve throughout their long marriage, as she incorporated new scientific discoveries into her practice while maintaining the practical adaptability that had made her so effective on the frontier. She corresponded with leading physicians and researchers around the world, contributing her own innovations to the growing body of medical knowledge while learning about advances that could benefit her patients. Her blood transfusion techniques became standard procedure in major hospitals, saving thousands of lives and establishing her as a pioneer in the field of emergency medicine. Thomas lived to the age of 78, passing peacefully in his sleep with Kate holding his hand. Their children and grandchildren gathered around them in the house they had built together on the edge of town. His funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives he had touched. From former outlaws he had helped reform to territorial officials who had learned from his example of principled, scientific law enforcement. Kate survived him by 5 years, during which she continued her medical work with undimmed passion and skill, as if her love for Thomas had given her the strength to carry on their shared mission even after his death. The dying sheriff had been saved not by mysterious powers, but by the medical expertise and courage of a young woman who had learned to combine advanced knowledge with frontier adaptability. In return, he had given her the home and family she had always dreamed of but never dared to hope for, creating a legacy that would inspire frontier communities for generations to come and reminding everyone that true healing comes not from magic but from education, dedication, and the courage to risk everything for those we love. Their story became a testament to the transformative power of knowledge, service, and partnership, proving that even in the harshest frontier conditions, two people committed to each other and to the welfare of others could create lasting changes that would benefit countless lives for generations to come. If you enjoyed this tale of medical innovation and love on the frontier, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories from the Old West. Leave a comment below and tell us what you think was the most powerful moment in Sheriff McKenna and Kate's story. And don't forget to share which Old West legend you'd like us to explore next. Your engagement helps us bring these amazing historical tales to life, so drop us a line and let us know what frontier stories capture your imagination the most.